Authors like, as you mentioned, Lovecraft, Borges, Turner, these are writers who deal almost exclusively with the absolute, you know, or E.M. Cioran, it's called a great writer for me, Nietzsche, another one. They don't mess around with the kind of the nuanced emotions and the little subtle things that happen in the course of a day and the frailties of our relationships. They're going at the absolute, you know, mankind in the cosmos, the awe and horror of being in the universe and this kind of thing. And there's a certain writer who has no patience for detail, for the subtleties, for all that kind of stuff, for interpersonal relationships. They couldn't give a damn about it. They're not really interested in it. I mean, that's why you don't represent, as the rappers say, you know. That's why it's still important. I get your pessimism. I get your pessimism about literary fiction and about the kind of the corpse of literature and so on. But there's still a need to speak the truth. And if the gift you have is to write prose or to write poetry, then there is still an obligation or an inner duty to write it and to do it, because you have to represent the people or this or your own self even who. Figures and people and realities which haven't been represented in, let's say, the mainstream. But what I also feel is that for me, I'm a reader, and I got into writing because I wanted to emulate the writers who I like and revere and so on. And as a reader, I've always been extremely impatient, and so I have a sense of I want the writer to take care of me, you know. I want to, no matter how avant-garde or how kind of experimental or so I want them to be seducing me. I want them to get me to turn the page, you know. So I like that balance. I like that kind of knife edge. This is my own personal aesthetic, and I try to live it, not just say it. I try to live it by what I produce as a writer. Is that it's a fine line between completely gratifying myself and seducing the reader. But naturally, when I write, I have my own obsessions and I have my own fixations and the stuff that I can't get away from. And the stuff that I write would tend to the characters who emerge from the fiction. Feel that I have, and hopefully people recognize that I have a certain authority to write about these things and write about these characters who are tormented and destroyed and desperate, because when I was younger, without any exaggeration, I was fucked up. I was completely fucked up, you know. I was off the edge. You know, I grew up against the backdrop there, even if I wasn't perfectly cognizant of it at the time, where religion was collapsing. All the old, and we all did, you know, where the old certainties were collapsing rapidly. New sexual moralities were emerging, still are. New kind of moralities, new systems of ways of thinking, new relationships between everything, the genders, the classes, the everything, and a post-national culture where we're more influenced by, you know, the world, by the globe, than we are by, you know, what you said, John McGahern, or by the Irish like local culture or whatever. And so maybe you know, like any great cultural revolution or any great cultural kind of movement, there's a lot of smashed eggs. There's a lot of people who get maimed. I grew up witnessing a lot of that, even being part of a lot of that. And so when I write and I try to understand my situation in the world, then what's going to come out and what has come out so far is an expression of that. And yeah, I like to think, I mean, I'm glad you think so, that I maybe did capture some kind of zeitgeist. INTERCONTINENTAL writer would be a label I would be proud to. I love that. I love that as a phrase, you know.
Nearly as much as Satan's coke.
Almost. But I love that you pointed that out. I think you know, I did, like, the fact is, I did spend, like, from as after I came of age, really much of my adult life engaging as deeply as I could with other cultures, and in a very earnest, very pragmatic, boots on the ground kind of way. You know, I was being silent in Buddhist monasteries for months at a time, and you know, waking up at 3 a.m. and you know, doing to meditate and stuff. I did all that, and I read I was engaged with the Eastern traditions, the South American literary traditions, the shamanistic traditions, all this stuff that you talk about. And I think, again, it's in the writing too, is that a lot of the questions and the obsessions and the fascinations that keep expressing themselves again and again in my fiction and in my writing, whatever kind of writing, is like Lovecraft, who you mentioned earlier, is the kind of is the metaphysical stuff. You know, these are the questions, the philosophical questions, the grand questions of the ones that are kind of unfashionable to talk about. You know, the ones that the questions of human life, of what it is to be alive, of what are we.
Two questions about this rumoured manuscript, which rumours appear only on the deep web, as you know, as we associate with Turner, of course, or something like that. He lived in the kind of deep web of existence.
Pre-deep web.
Is it true you have a fragment of a manuscript by him, a handwritten manuscript?
I will neither confirm nor deny those
rumours. That's fine. The other rumour which is around is that you have not quite plagiarized Turner. I wouldn't say that. Lawyers might say that. I wouldn't say that. I'd say you've sampled him, and that you have embedded in a dispersed kind of a way his work throughout your own work. This manuscript that you have, is there anything to that? Is there some other? Are you really kind of a ghost writer for Cillian Turner?
Ghostwriter for Cillian Turner. There are traces, as you will see, more and more traces of Cillian Turner have dispersed themselves across. He's a virus. He's out there. There's a French novel, massive French novel, that's just kicking off and winning all the awards over there now, called A History of Oblivion, which by Alice Senator, in which Cillian Turner is a character, and so on. You know, he's out there. But all I would say about plagiarism and sampling and so on is I would quote Public Enemy in their song "Caught Can I Get a Witness" and say, this is a sampling sport. Okay, so 2 years ago I was living down, as I'm living now, in Rosslare Harbour, County Wexford, which is a big quiet house down there, very isolating. Not the best place to be inspired by ideas. I like to be in a city, whatever. I like people, around me. But there, you do what you can. And so I was very bored trying to write stories and narratives and so on. And then one evening, I'd had a few drinks or something, and I'm sitting in the house, and I gave up on whatever I was trying to write. And just on the whim, I had lots of books around. I plucked a book up and grabbed a few words from it and wrote them down. And then another book, and then wrote a few words down, and did this more and more. And then, I had a few pages, and then I woke up the next day and read over, and I thought, I changed around a few things and I edited, but I thought, wow, this has some kind of force, this has some kind of mesmeric quality to it. So I got hundreds of books together, and I spaced them all around the place. I turned on the radio, turned on the TV, turned on the internet, and just kind of trying to get off into this kind of trancey state where I was going on pure intuition and using these kind of randomly plucked phrases, quotes, etc., as a kind of as a blast off point, and then interspersing them with my own writing and my own notes and my own and putting them all together into this kind of collage, this sample collage. I love this aesthetic of full creative glee, of completely doing my own thing and being as true to my own instincts and my own perversities as possible, but also I've got the reader in mind, because I'm a reader, so I like to be entertained, I like to be fascinated, making the reader care, making the reader want to read. It's not just aloof alienation or something. I just don't really have time for that.